Hi, my name is Just Weston. Have you ever been in this situation before? Where your roommate purchased every single Lord of the Rings, Tales of the Middle-earth, Magic the Gathering, Commander Precon deck in the Lord of the Rings, Tales of the Middle-earth, Magic the Gathering set, and then he took all of his cards and shuffled them together based off of rarity. And then, a year and a half later, you figure out that he's done this and reorganize all of the cards back into their original four decks. And then you make a YouTube video about it. And then a YouTube commenter named Chrono Moogle says that they are invested and would like to see a second part where you add cards from the Lord of the Rings, Tales of the Middle-earth main set to the commander decks that you organized for your roommate so that the decks are slightly better. And because he commented this, you decide to make a second part to the video where you do exactly that. Well, then this video is for you, and it's also mainly for Chrono Moogle. Here you go. So first, here are my rules and guidelines. There are four main rules and guidelines. It needs to be synergistic with the deck and its themes. It needs to fit the theme of the Lord of the Rings. That's kind of wishy-washy. It needs to be a good card. It needs to make the deck better. If it's a really bad card, not going to be added. And the fourth category is Bill the Pony. I'm also not changing a lot of cards, as the decks are built fairly well for this, only using Lord of the Rings cards. And so I will only be adding about 4 to 6 non-land cards, and then I'll be adding lands because there's only a few lands and they're kind of auto includes. So first, the Frodo and Samwise deck of Food and Fellowship. The deck theme is food tokens and using food tokens in alternate ways other than just gaining life, and it also majorly incorporates being tempted by the ring. The 6 cards I am adding are Samwise Gamgee, Orcish Bowmasters, Peregrine Took, Aragorn, Company Leader, Eleanor Gardner, and finally, Bill the Pony. Now, Bill the Pony is being added because we love Bill the Pony. It doesn't matter what he does, he's an auto and he's going in the deck. The other cards are mainly creatures, most of them halfling. Samwise Gamgee, Peregrine Took, and Eleanor Gardner all care about food tokens in one way or another. The 2 other inclusions is Aragorn, collect company leader, and that one's in there because this deck gets tempted by the ring the most, and you're almost always going to be doing it on the Frodo, that is the commander, and so Aragorn's secondary ability, where you put counters on him if he's not the ringleader, is really nice. And also, its theming is so good because Aragorn guides the hobbits on most of the adventures, or like half. I don't know. I haven't watched the movies that much. I've only seen them like twice fully through, and that was years ago. The one flavor fail is Orcish Bowmasters, but it's Orcish Bowmasters. This is included because it's just so good. And then the 2 lands I am including, the Shire and the Grey Havens. These are basically both just upgraded basic lands because they come into play untapped if there's a legendary creature, and this deck has a lot of legendary hobbits. So it's just kind of slightly upgraded, debatable, but since these are precons, they don't have tons and tons of non-basic lands, and so taking out a few basic lands I think is fine. I'm not adding random fetch lands because they won't be Lord of the Rings themed. I'm only adding cards. Literally, only adding cards from Lord of the Rings deck list. Here are all the cards that I am taking out of the deck. The cards that I am removing are on the bottom, and the cards I'm adding in are on the top. And they're kind of this is what I'm replacing each one with. My reasoning is I've played with all of the decks about 6 times, and it's not me playing 24 games. I played 6 times of these decks against each other, all 4 of them. My friends played them, and my friends' skill level were from people who have been playing for over a decade to people who are brand new. So the skill levels vary, but overall, the cards I'm removing from the decks are the cards that weren't really played. and it's like they were discarded because they were the worst card in the hand at the time, or like they were chosen not to be cast because there were other cooler things to be cast. If it just doesn't really do anything, let's remove it for something that'll do something. I'm not a master deck builder. I'm just, this is, I'm doing it and I'm making this video. Here is a picture of all the cards that didn't make the cut for various reasons. Next, let's go on to Aoan, the Riders of Rohans. This deck theme is humans and go wide, create a bunch of humans and swing out and having a lot of humans. That's what it is. And so I tried to focus on having human armies and a few other cards that just really benefited from going wide. So I added 2 creatures, Aoan, Fearless Knight, and Faramir, Prince of Ithilien. Aoan is just kind of removal on a stick. It permanently exiles it, and that's really sweet when she enters. It also allows the entire team to attack past any creature that share a color with the thing that it exiles. You exile their 3-colored commander, and now none of their creatures can block, unless they have colorless creatures, of course. That's really sick. And then Faramir, Prince of Ithilien. I added both of these creatures because they're human and they have cool effects. It lets you play like a forced politics game where you force someone to either give you cards or give you a lot more humans, which your deck wants a lot more humans. The next card is Harrogrim, Sword of Rohan, which is actually the Sword of Hearth and Home. While this deck doesn't have too many ETB effects that matter too much, it's still a sword, and it's really flavorful, and it's really fun. And so I added it to the deck. The next 2 are different things that I just feel fit in. It's Horn of Gondor and Flowering of the White Tree. Horn of Gondor creates humans, and then later you create more humans. It's great. It does exactly what the deck wants. And then Flowering of the White Tree uh, creates an anthem effect, and it boosts legendary creatures even more than it boosts regular creatures. And that's what your deck wants. It wants everything to be big, and it's also extremely cheap. It might be a little bit hard to cast in a 3-color deck, but whatever. You shouldn't really be casting it on turn 2. That's not really ideal. I mean, it's whatever. Ward 1 is also pretty fun. It's just like, hey, please don't touch my creatures, and then hopefully they won't touch your creatures. I'm adding 2 lands, Mines of Moria and Minas Tirith. Both of them are just strict upgrades if you have a legendary creature when you put it onto the battlefield. So that's sick. I don't even remember what they do specifically. I just know that they will probably do good. The reason that Minas Tirith is in this deck and not the Frodo and Samwise deck is because we only have one Minas Tirith. And so I put in this one because flavor, it seems like it fits better in this deck. And also, with this deck specifically, I added every single card that I wanted to add. Next is the Galadriel deck. The Elven Council deck cares about elves, and it also cares about voting. Voting is kind of the secondary thing. The main thing it wants is you want to be playing elves, and also it also cares about scrying. So I tried to add a little bit more, hey, let's try to scry a bit, so that is a little more apparent while keeping the elves the main focus. I have 4 non-land cards. Lost Isle Calling, Elven Chorus, Gandalf, Friend of the Shire, and Elrond, Master of Healing. Elrond is a scry payoff, which I wanted to add because the deck has a lot of scrying, but not a lot of payoffs. And he also discourages opponents from targeting your stuff because you'll get benefit. Gandalf, Friend of the Shire, while it isn't an elf, it is really cool. And I want Gandalf to be in more of the decks because he's really cool. I like Gandalf. And so I'm putting him in this deck. Yeah, this deck has slightly more sorceries, so it benefits a bit more from that. And this deck also, it's kind of easy to be tempted by the ring because of Galadriel's main ability. I'm mainly adding it because it's fun, and we love Gandalf. Elven Chorus. Elven Chorus, making all creatures into mana dorks, is a really strong ability, and the abundant scrying will allow you to cast creatures with its ability fairly commonly, maybe not so commonly, but it's really cool. And finally, Lost Isle of Calling. It's just a really good scry payoff if you can have it over the course of the game. It won't work super well. I fully realize that this card isn't super broken or super good, but it's really fun, and so I'm adding it to the game. Uh, the non-lands that didn't make the cut is Legolas Master Archer and Storm of Saruman. Uh, I thought that this deck would be able to cast 2 spells fairly easily, but overall, precons just don't really do that. I couldn't find any card that I wanted to cut. Legolas Master Archer, there's not too many targeting spells and abilities in this deck to make use of his main ability. So overall, they just don't do much. I'd love to add him for the flavor, but it just doesn't do much. Gandalf does a little bit more, and so we put him in because flavor is awesome. The lands, there's 4 lands. All of them are just basically strictly upgrades. It's the Grey Havens, the Shire, Rivendell. All 3 of those with legendary creatures are strict upgrades. And then Dol Amroth, which is actually Minamo School at Water's Edge. It's also a strict upgrade to basic land. It just doesn't care about legendary creatures. It's just strictly bad. It's super easy. It's a Universe Beyond reprint. All right, moving on. Final deck. Sound the alarms. The video is probably almost done. Sauron and his thing about evilness. Sauron is big spells. It wants to cast large spells towards the end of the game, and it does so pretty well. The deck also cares about orcs and goblins and casting non-creature spells, specifically instants and sorceries. So the cards I add are mainly just really cool cards. We're adding 5 non-land cards and 2 land cards. Non-land cards are Sauron the Necromancer, Sauron the Dark Lord, Witch King of Angmar, Orcish Bowmasters, and Warrior Marauder. Now, Sauron the Necromancer and Sauron the Dark Lord, all 3 Saurons, the third one being the main commander, Sauron, are powerful enough to be in the deck. I'd heavily consider, and I recommended my friends play with Sauron the Dark Lord as the face commander, because it's so good. It has so many abilities. I don't remember them because it has like 4 of them, and it's hard to remember. Anyways, Magic 2024. Sauron the Necromancer bringing creatures back is just really fun and cool. It's animation every turn, and then if it's the ring bearer, you get to keep it. Really awesome. Overall, the 2 cards just really sweet. Witch King of Angmar. His abilities are kind of so-so, but it's just a fun beater that is really awesome. Orcish Bowmasters is Orcish Bowmasters. It's so stupid and good. It's the same card that's being added to the Food and Fellowship, except for in this one, it just fits even better because it's an orc and also it's cruel and flavorful. It's beautiful. Warrior Marauder. I didn't think I would add it, but then I found a card that I was kind of just boring. The deck makes lots of goblins. It has lots of orcs and a giant orc army. Giving you impulsive draw when they deal combat damage is just very nice because of the amount of goblins and orcs that the deck makes. There are some non-lands that didn't make the cut. Hugh the Entwood, Palantir of Orthanc, Gandalf the Grey, and also Gothmog, Morgul Lieutenant. For Gothmog, Morgul, whatever, Morgul. For Gothmog, it just felt a little bit underwhelming, and so I decided not to add him to the deck. Giving Death Touch is really cool, but most of the time you were swinging in with like a 10-10 orc army, and so Death Touch is kind of irrelevant. The other 3 that I decided not to include are not because I don't think they would be good inclusions or because they're not flavorful. They are very flavorful. Most of them I'd say are pretty good inclusions. But the reason I'm not including these 3, Hugh the Entwood, Palantir of Orthanc, and Gandalf the Grey, is because of how complex they are. I am playing these decks mainly with a lot of beginners. Like all of my friend group and my roommate who purchased the decks, they're brand new. And so adding extra complicated magic cards wouldn't be that great. With Gandalf the Grey, first of all, flavorfully, that is a fail. And so that's another reason why I'm not including it in this one. But mechanically, it fits with the deck pretty good It cares about casting instants and sorceries. However, its payoffs aren't super rewarding, and it's a little bit difficult to figure out exactly when you should bounce him to your hand and when you should do all of the modes. A little bit complex. And Palomir of Ornthanc and Hugh the Entwood are in the exact same boat. It's overall hard to play optimally with those cards, at which I'm not expecting my friends to play optimally in these games. Of course not. They're new players. But adding really complicated magic cards is just a little too much reading, and it's not fun. With this one, we're adding the Mines of Moria and Barad-dûr, which are strict upgrades. Barad-dûr went into this deck instead of Food and Fellowship because we only have one, and it fits in this deck a lot more. It's flavorful. Cards that I haven't included in any decks for alternate reasons. First, Valley of Gorgoth. It's a reskinned Wasteland, and similar to the Sauron cards that I didn't include, they're just a little complicated. Wasteland, I don't know if they would know like what land they should destroy with it, and so I just left it out. The second card I left out is White Tower of Ecthelion, also known as Caracas. This is banned in Commander, so I didn't include it. Technically, I bet it wouldn't be a problem with me and my friend groups. We could rule zero it in, especially since they don't know anything about the ban list. But I'm just not going to include it because it's banned. And finally, the One Ring. The One Ring! My roommate got one copy of the One Ring. He's incredibly awesome. It's great. He's, now he's a millionaire. Isn't that how much they are worth? I think. I mean, I saw Post Malone bought one of them, and that one definitely isn't better than this one. Anyways, the One Ring definitely should go in any of these decks to make them better. It's a very good card. But which deck? I would have to choose one of them to go to get the One Ring, and that's not fair. Flavorfully, it should be Frodo's deck or Sauron's deck. Sauron because he made it, Frodo because he carried it the entire time. But I can't make one of these decks have the One Ring. Maybe I should. I don't know. Tell me which one should get the... What am I doing with finger guns? Tell me which one should get the One Ring. Which of these decks should I include the One Ring in, and why? That's a good call to action. Anyway, I think that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed the part 2 to My Roommate is an Idiot. Here's an outro.
In my last video, I said that my roommate said that Aragorn looks like this. My roommate does not actually think that he looks like this. My roommate is very smart and knows everything about Lord of the Rings. Here's really a bunch of the stuff that my roommate has, including these swords, these little miniatures, and all these books, and these other miniatures, including a little tape that's like the official release trailer of the first movie that came out in 2001. Yay! So please don't yell at my roommate. That was just me ad-libbing. Anyways, please subscribe. Bye. Thank you. Goodbye.